Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Leo.
And I'm Emma. Today, we're diving into a topic that seems simple, but actually says a lot about your lifestyle, your habits, and your personality: daily routines.
Yeah, people underestimate how interesting and different daily routines can be. Some people wake up at sunrise, meditate, journal, stretch.
And others wake up at 11 a.m., grab yesterday's pizza, and call it breakfast. No judgment, by the way.
We support all lifestyles, but today we'll go step by step through a typical day and teach you tons of useful English phrases to describe your routine. But before we get to the vocabulary, I think we need to pause and look at what a routine actually is.
Right, because the word itself has a fascinating history. It comes from the French word route, meaning a road or a beaten path. So when you have a routine, you are literally following a mental path you've carved out for yourself.
That makes sense. It's an autopilot mode, and biologically, our brains love that path. There's a lot of research on decision fatigue. The theory is that you have a limited amount of mental energy each day for making choices. If you have to decide what to wear, what to eat, and when to leave the house every single morning, you burn through that energy before you even get to work.
Exactly. That's why people like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg became famous for wearing the same clothes every day. It wasn't about fashion. It was about eliminating a decision to save cognitive resources. But let's start at the very beginning of that path, the morning.
Okay, so linguistically, the most common starting point is I wake up at, for example, I wake up at 7 a.m. on weekdays. But there is a crucial distinction here between wake up and get up.
Yes, wake up is the biological event when your eyes open and consciousness returns. Get up is the physical action when your feet touch the floor and you leave the bed.
And for some of us, the gap between those two events is significant. I'm definitely guilty of hitting the snooze button. That phrase, hit the snooze button, is so aggressive, but it's accurate. You are delaying the inevitable.
It's actually scientifically interesting why we do that. We have this thing called sleep inertia. It's that groggy, heavy feeling right after waking. Biologists say it's because your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control, isn't fully online yet. It takes about 30 minutes to boot up.
So when I hit snooze, it's not me being lazy, it's just my prefrontal cortex loading.
You can tell yourself that, but once you do get up, you usually freshen up. This is a great umbrella term for brushing your teeth, washing your face, and getting dressed. And then there's the make the bed debate.
I'm a big believer in making the bed. There was a famous speech by Admiral William McRaven where he said that making your bed is the first task of the day. If you do it, you've accomplished something before 8 a.m. It sets a psychological tone.
It does. It signals to your brain that the rest period is over and the active period has begun. Then comes breakfast. We hear phrases like, I grab a quick breakfast, or I make a cup of coffee. But notice the verb grab. It implies speed and motion. It's a very modern way to eat.
And some people say, I usually skip breakfast, which brings us to the phrase, I'm not a morning person. We often treat this as a preference, but it's actually genetic, isn't it?
It is. Scientists call these chronotypes. You have larks, who are natural morning people, and owls, who are night people. Research published in journals like Nature Communications suggests this is hardwired into our DNA. Back in hunter-gatherer times, it was an evolutionary advantage. If half the tribe was awake late at night and the other half woke up early, someone was always watching for predators.
So if you struggle to wake up at 6 a.m., you're not lazy. You're just evolving to protect the tribe from nocturnal lions. I love that.
Let's move to the next phase, the commute. After breakfast, most people head to work or school. The verb head here is very common. It just means to go in a specific direction.
And the commute itself has its own vocabulary. I commute by bus. I'm stuck in traffic. The train is delayed. But I want to talk about the phrase I zone out. This is when you stare out the window and disconnect mentally.
Zoning out is actually vital. In neuroscience, this is related to the default mode network. It's the state your brain enters when it's not focused on a specific task. That zoning out time on the bus might be the only time in the day your brain gets to organize memories and process emotions without you trying to control it.
That's a great point. We tend to view the commute as wasted time, but historically, it's a transition ritual. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people worked where they lived. A blacksmith lived above his shop, a farmer lived on his land. The idea of going to work, leaving one building to go to another, is a relatively recent invention of the industrial age.
Right, it created a physical separation between life and labor, which brings us to the workday itself. We use phrases like, I get things done, I check emails, or I work on projects. But one phrase I find fascinating is power through.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm tired, but I need to power through this report. It implies using force to overcome resistance.
And the etymology supports that. Power comes from the Latin potere, meaning to be able. So you are asserting your ability against the difficulty. But there is a danger there too. We often glorify powering through when we should probably be taking a break.
That connects to the myth of multitasking. You hear people say, I'm great at multitasking, but technically the human brain cannot multitask. We can only task switch. We toggle back and forth between emails and writing very quickly, and every time we switch, we pay a cognitive tax. We get slower and make more mistakes.
So when you say, I need to catch up on work, meaning you are behind schedule, it might be because you were trying to multitask too much. Another big change recently is the phrase, I work remotely. This has completely collapsed that separation of home and work we talked about earlier.
It has. Now the commute is just walking from the bedroom to the kitchen table. It requires a lot more discipline to define when the routine starts and ends.
Which leads us perfectly to the end of the workday. The classic phrase is, I get off work at 6, or I clock out. Then you unwind.
Unwind is such a visual word. It imagines the person as a tightly coiled spring or a clock that has been wound up too tight. You need to release that tension. You might say, I chill on the couch, or I head home.
And this is where the third place comes in. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg coined this term. Your first place is home, your second place is work, the third place is where you catch up with friends. Cafes, parks, barbershops, it's essential for community. But in modern routines, we often skip the third place and go straight to the couch.
We do. We replace the third place with scrolling on my phone. That's a huge part of the modern night routine. I doom scroll or I binge watch a series.
That brings us to a very specific and trendy psychological concept, revenge bedtime procrastination.
That sounds intense. What does it mean?
It's a translation of a Chinese term, bao fu xing ao ye. It describes people who don't have much control over their daytime life. Maybe they work long hours or have high-pressure jobs, so they refuse to go to sleep early in order to regain some sense of freedom late at night. They stay up until 2 a.m. scrolling or watching TV, not because they aren't tired, but because that's the only time that belongs solely to them.
That is heartbreakingly relatable. You are taking revenge on the daytime by stealing hours from the night. So when someone says, I stay up too late, it's often an emotional response, not just bad time management.
Precisely. And that sabotages the final part of the routine. I wind down and I go to sleep. If you are revenge procrastinating, you aren't winding down. You're staying stimulated.
So, to recap the structure of talking about this, we use the present simple tense for these habits. I usually wake up. I rarely go out. These adverbs, usually, rarely, sometimes, are the frequency knobs on the dashboard of our lives.
I like that analogy. And for the exceptions, we use once in a while or every now and then. These soften the routine. They show we aren't robots.
Okay, let's hit those personal questions we mentioned at the start. It puts all this vocabulary into context. Rachel, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Total night owl. Like I said, my DNA is apparently watching for predators at 2 a.m. My brain starts working around 7 p.m. What about you?
I wish I were a morning person, but I'm definitely a night owl who is forced by society to wake up early. The hardest part of my routine is definitely getting out of bed. It's a physical battle every single day.
For me, it's cooking dinner. I experience serious decision fatigue by 6 p.m. I open the fridge and just stare at it. I always think, do I really have to decide what to eat again?
That's why ordering takeout is such a popular phrase. It solves the cooking problem, but you still have to decide what to order. What is one thing you want to add to your routine?
I want to start stretching in the mornings. I feel like my body is stiff from that sleep inertia we talked about. What about you?
I want to stop checking my phone first thing after waking up. It puts me instantly into reactive mode, answering emails, seeing bad news, before I've even brushed my teeth. I need to protect that morning headspace.
That is a great goal. It goes back to that idea of the path. You want to choose your own path in the morning, not let an algorithm choose it for you.
Exactly. Routines shouldn't be cages. They should be scaffolding, a structure that helps you build the life you want. If your routine makes you miserable, it's time to change the architecture.
And that wraps up today's deep dive into daily routines. We hope these phrases, from hitting the snooze button to winding down, help you describe your own day in natural, everyday English.
Tell us in the comments, what does your daily routine look like? Do you engage in revenge bedtime procrastination?
Thanks for spending time with us today.
And we'll see you in the next episode.